preservation master. Is that a matter plan? It's a master plan.
Good evening. My name is Wendy Shea, and I'm the Historic Preservation, excuse me, Historic Preservation Manager for the City of Independence. Don't know.
Happy to have you here.
Thank you. I'm just trying to find out how to forward the presentation. Swipe up. Can do. Thank you. The Historic Preservation Division is actually divided into two different departments, and that's community development and our Parks, Recreation, and Tourism Department. The Preservation Master Plan was actually developed as a planning tool for our community development side of historic preservation, and that includes serving as a liaison to the Independence Heritage Commission, reviewing building permits, doing compliance review, public education and outreach, preservation grants, and coordination with regional heritage groups. What is the Historic Preservation Master Plan? A prioritized guide for staff and citizens concerning citywide preservation efforts. It sets obtainable long-range planning goals to move preservation forward and addresses planning, zoning, economic incentives, property maintenance, and public outreach. Why update the previous plan? The previous plan was adopted in April of 2000 and was a chapter in the previous comprehensive plan, Chapter 11. 5 years updates are required per certified local government standards. The City of Independence is a certified local government as recognized by the State Historic Preservation Office in Jeff City. And this project was partially funded by a certified local government grant. Staff identified the need for an easy-to-use, community-driven guide for both the city and its citizens. As part of that process, there was a lengthy public engagement process that included 4 public input meetings from December 2018 to June 2019. There was a stakeholder steering committee, a Heritage Commission master plan committee, and online and paper surveys that were distributed to the citizens of Independence. Based on public input, the plan identifies and prioritizes 5 strategies to tackle in the next 5 years: to document citywide historic resources through architectural surveys, create economic incentives, assist historic property owners through technical support and workshops, support the expansion of property maintenance programs to discourage demolition and demolition by neglect, and use technology to connect citizens to the built environment. The next steps, once the plan is adopted by the City Council, are to conduct architectural surveys starting with the Fairmount Neighborhood and Commercial District, research economic incentives for historically designated properties, upload the new master plan and all current surveys to the city's preservation webpage, sponsor new outreach and educational programs that highlight the city's historic architecture, including walking tours, workshops, and lectures. The plan will be coming before the council at the September 3rd regular council meeting for official adoption. Once that's done, it will be uploaded to the city's webpage for access by the general public. Council was given paper copies of this plan, and so I'm available if you have any questions. Otherwise, I thank you for your time this evening.
Let me turn. I am on. Thank you. That seems to be the correct way of doing these things. Thank you for being here. What I look at and what has been given to us before is that we have a lot of things in disarray. We're having trouble getting the money to the repairs. We're putting out the propaganda or the deal to come here for this, and that's costing us money. I see that you're addressing that situation to be more of a get what we got rebuilt, and I applaud you for that.
Thank you.
Mr. Mayor Pro Tem. Wendy, can you expand a little bit on the survey that we're going to do in the Fairmont neighborhood. What's your thoughts and ideas on that?
Sure, yeah, there's been a little bit of confusion with the term surveys. These are architectural surveys, and what we utilize them for are a variety of things. One is to determine what the date of construction is for most of the properties. Our historic preservation ordinance allows for the Preservation Division to review citywide demolition permits. And because of that, and because the Preservation Division is made up of one staff member, there is not a lot of time to do research on these properties. And so the availability of historic property, architectural descriptions, property ownership history, of dates of construction allow us to do that review more efficiently, but also to be able to get that information out to the public. So if realtors are interested in doing due diligence, or historic property owners are interested in doing some background research on their own properties, all this information is gathered in a survey, and that information will be uploaded once it's complete to allow for public access.
There's a tremendous amount of history up in that area, and it's amazing to see how that whole area's changed from since the 1900s to present. It's absolutely amazing. There's some big stuff that we're trying to plan, working with the state to try to improve 24 Highway with some grants and partnerships with MoDOT and ourselves and Sugar Creek that we're trying to plan and put application in with the state. I think by the first of the year that could really help transform that business district and stuff down there to help move Fairmont forward. The area is coming alive, still have some rough spots, some areas that we need to tweak and stuff, but I have to give a shout out to Fairmont Elementary School. They are one of the best elementary schools that we have in our district. They are doing great stuff. Van Horn, they're doing great stuff over there. So that whole side of town, it's slowly coming back. So it's nice to see that, and thanks for helping us try to see what's out there and what we can preserve and see how we can work with that.
Thank you.
Working with the people who conduct the demolitions, they don't go in and do things without that research. They've been very competent in doing those things. So the program is there to use that sort of situation should you want to avail yourself of it.
Thank you.
More
Mr.
than
Mayor
welcome.
Pro Tem? Oh, Mayor. This may be a question for our city manager. You know, we have a lot of great historic sites the city owns and operates and works. I'll pause for a second. Mr. City Manager.
Sorry, we had a little security issue there.
Nope, that's
We're
quite
back. We're live.
That's okay. So we have a lot of great historic properties and stuff that we own and operate and work through, but there's a lack of funds to really do the adequate work that we need to do and to address. How do we work through that? I mean, what are some of the strategies that we can start laying forward to try to bring forth some structure to how we can fund this? I know Eric has worked diligently with our groups to put a plan together. It's all about timing and feeling the pulse of our community. They've been gracious to pass the pets and police tax. I think it's too soon to go forward with any other initiative right now, but at some point we need to really get with our staff and put forward a good package that we can bring to our citizens at some point to discuss this.
Right. So things like this presentation that Ms. Shea's given us tonight, there are a lot of work that go into them, but they're critically important to helping communicate with our constituency, with our residents and business owners here about what that need is and to lay out that strategic vision so that people can understand if they were to rally around a cause, what's the outcome, what's going to be the value for supporting something like that. A lot of the items that we're talking about in here are captured in our downtown redevelopment plan that was adopted by this council about a year ago, and that the honor roll working group that I know you and Councilmember Huff are a part of continue to push those forward. So it's just critically important that these plans don't become dormant, that they don't become doorstops, but that they are really communication tools that we continue. But I think you're really barking up the right tree, that we're going to have to continue to state our case and help understand how these assets can really be economic engines for our community.
Thank you. Thanks for this. This is awesome. Thanks, Wendy.
You're welcome. Thank you.
I just had a couple other questions, Mayor Pro Tem. So the architectural surveys, will that be done by our staff, or is that outsourced to a group to do?
So our certified local government status allows us to go in for a variety of grants throughout the year. There are at least 2 cycles a year, and staff has been putting together survey grant applications.
Okay.
We're in the process of just recently being awarded for the first phase of the Fairmount Neighborhood Survey. We have recently submitted a pre-application for consideration for the second phase, and that is matched by 40% match with staff time. But the grant funds would actually go to pay a consultant to do the survey work.
Okay, so it won't be dependent on staff or take staff time to do it. That's what I was wondering.
Staff will be there in a supportive role to assist with some research and administrative time, but otherwise it will be the consultant.
Okay, and then the creation of economic incentives, will those be recommendations that'll come to the council, or will that be instituted by the, by your department, by the historic preservation people itself?
So there'll be some research on my part to try to determine the best types of economic incentives for locally designated properties. That would then probably go to the Heritage Commission for a recommendation, and then it would come on to council from that point.
Okay, very good, thank you. Thank you for being here.
Thank you.
This being such a intricate part of our culture, I mean, the historic preservation is ultimate to us, and it's been shown many times by the consideration that is given to the fact that it is from the people. Thank you for your help and work.
It is a privilege to work in Independence as a preservation supporter and advocate, and it's my pleasure. Thank you.
Our second presentation is the tax increment financing 5-year review. Mr. City Manager.
Yes, Mr. Mayor Pro Tem and members of the council, as statutorily required, tonight we have a 5-year update on several tax increment financing projects. Presentation will come from Community Development Director Tom Scannell.
Good evening. So as the city manager has alluded to, this presentation, I'm going to provide a 5-year update on 5 different redevelopment plans. A lot of 5s there. So tax increment financing is an economic development tool that allows the use of a portion of the increment captured from the property tax increase, as well as the increase in sales tax, to assist in funding a redevelopment project. Once a TIF district is established and the redevelopment plan is approved by the City Council, state statute requires that a public hearing every 5 years on the redevelopment plan and the project be held until that TIF project is closed. In this case, the public hearing will be at the next regular council meeting, which is September 3rd. The first TIF that I'm going to cover is the Blue Ridge Crossing East TIF. This is located between I-70 and 40 Highway, just east of Blue Ridge Boulevard. This map here shows a closer view of where that project is located. This plan called for the demolition and removal of blight on the property, construction of necessary utilities and infrastructure, and to transform the redevelopment area into a productive retail space. This TIF was approved in 2009 and was approved for 23 years. It captures 50% of the EATS, that's the sales tax, coming off the project, and 100% of the pilots, which is the property tax. This redevelopment project covers approximately 8.4 acres and includes a 60,000 square foot retail building, which is the Burlington Coat Factory. It also showed a 12,500 square foot multi-tenant retail building, as well as a 3,300 square foot fast food restaurant. The latter two have not been constructed yet. This slide shows kind of a snapshot of where we are at with this TIF. It's a $21.9 million total project cost. The incentive that was approved is a little over $6.4 million. And this TIF is a pay-as-you-go. So as the funds are captured, both the EATs and the pilots, those funds are then used to reimburse the developer for the project cost.
Excuse me, Tom. So does that slide mean that 3.7 million has been paid back to the developer? Is that what the certified reimbursable costs mean?
That is the amount that has been reimbursed.
Okay.
That does not mean that that is the amount that has been reimbursed back to the developer. So how it works is, as the developer incurs cost, he submits those costs to the city. The city then has to certify that those costs are associated with that project, and per the redevelopment plan are eligible to be reimbursed. So what that shows is that $3.7 million, he has certified those costs. So those costs can be reimbursed as the special allocation fund receives those EATs and pilots, and the city will reimburse those funds up to that $3.7 million.
Not the 6.4?
Correct. And the reason why there is that difference is that in this project, there's two of the buildings that have not been constructed yet, and some of the improvements that are required as part of that, some of those reimbursable costs, have not been certified yet. So that's the reason why there is that difference.
Thank you.
So the next TIF is the Independence Regional Medical Center TIF. This is also known as Center Point Hospital. This is located at the northeast corner of Jackson Drive and 39th Street. And then this map kind of shows where this TIF is located. This plan called for making enhancements to the tax base of the city, removing blight, improving traffic flow, and making enhancements to the roadways out there, as well as improving the quality of health care for the residents. This TIF was approved in 2004 for 23 years. It captures 50% of the EATs and 100% of the pilots. The redevelopment project covers approximately 86 acres and includes a 257-bed hospital, a surgical center, as well as additional medical offices. This slide shows the kind of a snapshot of where this TIF is at. Overall, this project was over $302.5 million. This is a pay-as-you-go, so again, as those funds are coming in, and the costs are certified, the dollars will be reimbursed back to the developer for the reimbursable project costs. The next TIF is Golf Strategies, also known as Drum Farms. This is located along Lee Summit Road, north of Kiger Road. And again, this map kind of shows where this TIF is located. This plan called for providing development. It sought to expand the city's tax base by increasing both housing and employment opportunities, and was seeking to enhance the public health, safety, and welfare. This redevelopment project covers approximately 320 acres and includes the construction of 145 single-family homes, an 18-hole golf course, clubhouse, a maintenance building, as well as sewer and roadway improvements. This TIF was approved in 1999 for 23 years, and it captures 50% of the EATs and 100% of the pilots. The slide here shows the snapshot of this, a little over $39 million project, and again, this is a pay-as-you-go.
Tom, can I ask a question? Mayor Pro Tem? Mayor Pro Tem? It's me. I wanted to ask a question.
And you asked.
So, since we're about...
Go ahead.
Okay. Since we're about 3 years away from the end of this TIF, how close are we to paying it off? And does it expire at the end of 23 years if it hasn't paid out the total reimbursable cost?
Yes, it does. And so what happens at the end of the 23 years, the life of the TIF? The TIF is terminated. There'll be an ordinance that is brought before the city council to turn that off. Once that is approved, all of the taxes that were being reallocated into the TIF allocation fund would then go back to all the other taxing jurisdictions. So the county, the school district, the city.
Mental health. Yeah. So how much has been paid out of the reimbursable cost? Do you have those figures?
I do not have those figures. I can look those up and get those back to you.
Okay.
So Tom, what happens if 23 years happens and we haven't reached the TIF incentive approved number and we close it, but the money keeps coming in? Do they just not get paid?
That's correct, yes. Because this is a pay-as-you-go.
Okay.
Meaning that as the funds come in, if there's a shortfall in the revenue coming in versus the expenses that the developer expended at the beginning of the TIF,
Okay.
the funds just go back to the taxing jurisdictions.
I was going to wait, but seeing how we're just asking as it goes, you do a very good job of keeping up with where the TIF is and what's paid and showing these slides. What about the contractor? Are they on board? I mean, are they at a level? Do you have any insight to that?
On the contractors?
And what they're doing, are they up to the getting done what they had hoped to achieve? On the Blue Ridge Crossing project, would you say that everything is running?
Correct, yes. Yeah, that developer, they have one building built. They still have two buildings yet to build. They're actively marketing that site and are doing everything that they can to try to market that site so that the funds that they expended, that they can get reimbursed through the TIF.
Right. Okay, so as this is applied, I had heard that there was a bit of resistance or that they'd run into some things. Are they overcoming it and working with, but to keep us appraised of where it's going?
Correct, yes.
Thank you.
So the next TIF is the Crackneck Creek TIF. This is generally located at the southwest corner of I-70 and 291 and extends over to Lee Summit Road. And this map again kind of shows the boundary of that TIF. This plan called for expanding the city's tax base, addressing the retail leakage that was experienced in eastern Jackson County, but also to increase employment opportunities and to facilitate both public and private improvements in the southeast part of Independence. This redevelopment project covers approximately 192 acres and includes 83 acres of park space, 160,000 square foot Bass Pro, 167 room hotel, as well as an additional 537,000 square feet of retail, as well as other roadway improvements. This TIF was approved in 2004, and it was approved for 23 years. It captures 50% of the eats and 100% of the pilots. This slide here shows the snapshot of this TIF. This one is a little bit different than the others in that there were bonds that were sold for this TIF versus the others, which are pay-as-you-go.
Mr. Mayor Pro Tem.
Councilman,
Tom, the additional 537 square feet, that's not what's out there now, is it? Is that what is total availability?
That was total within the plan. In recent years, they've built Duluth Trading Company, Los Cabos, I forget the name of the Pizza Ranch,
But they still have some good space
Hobby
out
Lobby,
there left.
Mardell. Yeah, there's still some good space that's available out
Anything
there.
big on the radar coming that you can see down the line?
We have not heard anything from the developers.
Sure like to see those spaces built out more.
Absolutely,
More
yeah.
quickly, get this TIF paid off faster.
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem, I've got a question too.
Councilman.
Mr. Scannell, in looking at the figures here, obviously, it's a 23-year TIF as well, correct?
Yes. Yes.
But it's financed by bonds that are underwritten by the city, correct?
Correct. Yes.
And so we're not getting any of the financials on the balloon payments that are going to come due down the road, and are we going to get some of those figures later? Because we're just getting kind of an overview of the TIFs here, but we're not getting any of the details. This happens to be the only one, or one of the only ones so far we've looked at that are funded by bonds that are underwritten by the city. It's my understanding also with the Crackerneck Creek TIF that we extended that when we included the development of Menards. Is that correct? So that is part of the income for the bond payments and becomes part of the TIF territory that's not on the map that's on here as well. But since a lot of those bond payments will be coming due, and I know we refinanced a good share of them a few years ago, 2 or 3 years ago, but there's some of them that we haven't yet. So will we get some financials on that maybe down the road?
Yeah, if I could jump in there, council member. I've been working with the finance director, with Mr. Scannell, with the assistant city managers recently on looking at all of our economic activity debt. And obviously, the Crackerneck Creek TIF is one that jumps to the front of the page because the city is backing the bonds there. There are a couple of maneuvers that have been made in recent years to help defray the city's liability there. As you mentioned, we've done a few refinancings. We've also redrawn the boundaries of that TIF to pick up the Menards and Quick Trip area around Little Blue Parkway. So those payments, those revenues are helping support that. As future, current TIFs come off the book in future years, the city has pledged its revenues from those to this TIF as well to help underwrite the debt service payment there as well. But we will need to continue to monitor this. We're working on some plans. I would say probably within the next 4 to 5 years, we're going to have to look at another refinancing as well. But we will be bringing some information to the council about that in the very near term to once we complete our analysis on all of those.
Can I ask what the lease, the number of years of lease we have on the Bass Pro building?
Yeah, let me, if I'll tell you what, I will communicate that back.
Because they're an anchor, we've got to have them there. so-
Absolutely, right, yes. And so let me confirm what that number is in the contract, just so I
Okay.
don't misquote that.
Okay.
Mr. Mayor Pro Tem.
Councilman.
To add to that, Mr. City Manager, with the spaces that are available, how do we get the individuals out there to really get aggressive getting those spaces built out? I mean, that would definitely help the debt service. They need to really be working on that. This has been a slow-moving project. This project, it's been slow-moving. I think I'll just leave it like that. How do we get them aggressive to get that thing built out? It's a great location. There's really no excuse for it, to be honest with you.
Absolutely. I can tell you that my staff and I are reopening the lines of communication with the developer and their representation out there, and making sure that is frequent and that is the expectations are clear. Obviously, the initial concept of large retail pad sites, with what the economy has done, moving to more of an online system, that is a little bit different. They don't build these large retail pad sites as much anymore, but we still have a need to go out to eat. We still have other development opportunities. For example, I think we're seeing over at the Independence Center some new and exciting things they're doing to reinvent themselves. So we hold their feet to the fire and make our expectations clear, because we do have excellent development opportunities over there, and we need to leverage those.
Is there anything that we could do as a city council, to maybe, lack of a better word, help with the zoning or the restrictions of what can be or cannot be built there? Can we loosen or tighten or anything?
I think there are some opportunities that may make sense on that, and as part of this analysis that I was just mentioning, we are really doing a very deep dive on this particular one. The bond covenants, they really envision this being a destination type outcome, really a wildlife wilderness type thing, and so there's a lot of restrictions on what can and can't go in there. I don't think you want to go and just open it carte blanche, but I think we also have to modernize ourselves to where we're at as we head into 2020 and what the economy will bear today. So where those are those opportunities, we'll bring that and seek the council's support to modify those covenants.
2004, there just wasn't this idea of online buying. I mean, Amazon wasn't like it is now, for sure. So, I mean, the times are changing, and we need to keep up with that.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
Having worked with the city manager and you, and to keep this our jewel so that certain things won't detract from it, and we've turned down what we thought not to be a addition. And for most people here, the quagmire that you have inherited, you have done a really great job in paddling through. Thank you.
Thanks. We're having a little bit of technical difficulties. All right. As Steve is working on that, the last TIF is Recovery Sales Outlet, which is also known as Cargo Largo. This TIF is located at, it's along Nolan Road, north of 35th Street. This TIF, this is actually its final year of this TIF, so this is the last report regarding this one. This plan called for eliminating blight within the area, encouraging orderly development, expanding the tax base, and increasing employment opportunities, as well as enhancing health, safety, and welfare in the community. So the project covers approximately 38 acres and includes 694,000 square feet for retail, office, industrial, and warehouse space, as well as other public infrastructure improvements. As I mentioned, this plan was approved in 1996 for 23 years, so this TIF will be closed later this year. It's always nice to have one of those come off the books. This TIF captures 50% of the eats and 100% of the pilots. As Steve continues to work on that, this is a pay-as-you-go. The TIF incentive that was approved was $7.3 million. $3.6 million of that was certified. And again, this is a pay-as-you-go, so as the revenues are coming in, the city would reimburse up to that $3.6 million. That concludes my presentation, and I'm available for any other questions.
Thank you, Tom.
Our final presentation is on medical marijuana. Mr. City Manager.
Yes, Mr. Mayor Pro Tem and members of the council, at the City Council's August 12th regular meeting, we had additional legislative action related to our UDO amendments on the medical marijuana zoning items. At that meeting, council asked us to continue this item to the study session this evening. Our intent tonight as staff is to provide the council with some information about what other cities have done to take legislative action on this. We also have a few next step concepts for the council as to where we could go from here. So tonight I will ask Community Development Director Tom Scannell to share with you what these other communities are doing and what some of your options could be potentially be moving forward. Mr. Scannell.
Thank you. So I'm going to do this old school. You have at your place a sheet that provides a two-sided sheet that has the comparison of the regulations that we have put together, and it compares our regulations to 6 other communities within Missouri. On the front side of that sheet, where Independence is listed, it compares us to, on that first slide, it's Independence, Blue Springs, Lee Summit, and Springfield. All of us have adopted similar regulations in regards to the buffer. We have 1,000 feet from churches, schools, and daycares. Springfield did lessen the buffer from daycare and churches. That slide also shows whether cities required a special use permit or not. We were the only one that we surveyed that requires a special use. All of the cities required a business license. All of the cities except for Columbia have a standard business license process, meaning that you apply for the business license, it goes through a simple review, and the business license is issued. Many of the cities have similar additional requirements. Thank you. That are similar to ours. So as you can see up on the screen there, our requirements that these uses would have to meet are similar to what Blue Springs, Lee Summit, and Springfield have. KCMO has fewer additional requirements than what we have. Columbia has, within their zoning ordinance, some of the same requirements that we have. They added some additional restrictions regarding mobile structures and those types of things. As I mentioned previously, Columbia is, they have some pending legislation that's going to their city council regarding business license process, and they're looking to establish a point system that's roughly based on what DHSS is putting together and how they are scoring the applications at the state level. On this slide, we have put together kind of the potential next steps. And there's 4 of them up there. You can approve bill number 19058. That is the bill that was proposed at the August 5th council meeting. If that took place, that ordinance would supersede the July 15th ordinance number 19023. Sure.
I'm looking for the next steps here. Is anybody finding the next steps? No. I am seeing no next steps in here.
Okay.
Sorry.
It's on the screen.
Right.
Yeah.
No, I appreciate that.
It's up there?
Thank you. I was just, making sure I didn't miss it as I was reviewing my packet. Okay, I'm just saying, I see a lot of legalese, and I understand why I'm not an attorney, for
Yeah,
sure.
with it, with,
be kind of important to be able to take home if you get that to us.
okay,
Okay.
absolutely. Within the council packet, we included Amendment 2 to the Constitution. We also included the emergency rules that DHSS finalized June 3rd. And then we also provided that comparison sheet, two-sided, which lists these two slides here. So on the number 2 of the proposed next steps, you can
Tom,
deny.
I'm sorry.
Yes.
I don't know what 19058 is.
190.
We've talked about so many different ones.
Yes.
That I don't know which one we're talking about, 19058.
Bill number 19058 is the bill that was presented at the city council meeting on August 5th.
Before we amended it with the special use permit and the 2,500 feet.
No, this came after that. The one
Okay.
that amended, that added the special use permit, the 2,500 feet from other.
Other
dispense-
facilities.
other
Is that
facilities.
19023?
19023, that is correct.
That's that one.
Correct.
So 058 is which one?
058 is the bill that was introduced to council on August 5th.
Give me
Councilwoman,
another clue.
It's the one that would, the amended one. So we adopted one, we proposed and adopted one. This second, the one that's listed up here is proposed is the one that was voted to continue 2 weeks ago.
Studying.
Right.
Okay.
But it's, we might refer to it as the amended UDO.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
Okay, so the second next step would be to deny that bill. If that took place, the July 15th ordinance would stay in place. The third potential step would be to amend Bill number 19058 and approve. If that occurred, that would supersede again the July 15th 19023 ordinance. Or the fourth potential step would be to remand Bill 19058 back to the Planning Commission with instructions on what they wanted to do, hold a public hearing, anything else. So those are kind of the 4 next steps with, that we came up with.
Mayor Pro Tem?
Yes.
So it seems to me, remanding it back to the Planning Commission with another public hearing is going to drag it out. And for me, thinking rationally, we can't include any significant changes than what the Missouri Constitution says. And because the Missouri Constitution's pretty clear, and it looks like every single other city has the setback requirements that are explicit in the regulations from the state, I don't see that there's any reason for us to mess around except adopt 19-058, which our outside legal counsel, the experts that we paid to review it and help write it, recommended to us. So I'm willing to take the experts' recommendation, and I'm willing to not put this off to put the city at legal risk in the future. So I see no reason to remand it back, because even if there's a lot of other comments, we're not going to be able to include those because they're not going to meet the regulations of the state of Missouri. So why put it off? We've got the expert's opinion. We've got it written. It's before us. I see no reason why we shouldn't ask the council to vote on it at the next council meeting. And then that will at least put it in place so that we're not ruled unconstitutional by the state and potentially at risk for legal consequences. So for me, rationally thinking, that's really the only alternative that's before the council. And I don't know why we would want to put it off, because it's going to happen that way. It's going to happen that we're going to have to go back to the setbacks that are in the state constitution. So I'll let you guys decide because I'm only one vote, but I would recommend that we consider putting it back on the agenda for next Tuesday night. There's no other choice. You can do it now or you can do it later, but I think that's really the only choice. So,
I agree with Councilmember Roberson. So you're 2 votes.
I might get a second. Can I move and put it on the- We can't.
Yeah, you can. I mean, I don't know if you want to, because you might get voted down. Why not you just add it?
Let's wait and see what John.
That's long enough.
Yeah.
Anything else?
I don't have anything else to add.
All righty.
Can I say one more thing? I think since this is the study session, I mean, this is the time for us to talk about it in open session. And, you know, if somebody wants to make a motion to put it on the agenda, I'm sure I'd be happy to second it, or Karen would, but I'd like some other discussion. I'd like to hear what the rest of the council was thinking.
I don't have a problem taking it back to the planning commission and let them revisit myself.
You don't have what?
I don't have a problem taking it back to the planning commission and let them revisit this, bring it back.
Mr. City Manager, we're involved in a lawsuit right now, right? On
There-
this medical marijuana?
There is some, yeah, well, I'll let the city attorney speak to it.
We were involved in business license litigation that had to do with a medical marijuana facility, but that has been resolved.
What does that mean?
It means that the judge came out with decisions last week, and so the city is not involved in current litigation on that.
So the lawsuit is over?
Correct. Unless, it could be appealed, but right now we don't have any pending actions.
So if we remand this to Planning Commission, what effect will that have? Assume it's going to take a month before Planning Commission has a public hearing with the required notice and stuff. What effect does that have on the application process to the state? Have we messed up? There's people here wanting us to do something, I know that. So if we remand it back, has that messed stuff up?
It's my understanding that until the state licenses are approved, the state licenses can be updated and amended to reflect any changes. That's my understanding. They can be supplemented.
Whoa, 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 please. You are all wrong. You are very wrong. I appreciate your enthusiasm, but somebody's trying to speak here.
The information we received came from the state.
So,
If you don't want to listen, you have to leave. This is what this is for, so the public can hear.
You know what, I'll think anyways, these businesses were given an opportunity to apply by a deadline. That deadline is now passed, essentially eliminating access for patients. That's what you did by continuing this. All the money. That's what you've done. You've killed people.
Order.
if our present ordinance stays on the books, which is what would happen if we remanded this back to the Planning Commission, correct? And the present ordinance that we did in fact pass calls for the 2,500 feet and the 500 feet, and it's more restrictive than the Constitution. That opens up the city to liability for an unconstitutional law. And some other entity can then file suit in order to try and improve their chances to get a state license, correct?
I don't know the mechanics of what that would look like, but I do believe it's possible.
As it sits right now with our 2,500 feet and the 500 feet from residential, can anybody qualify under our existing statute to get a medical, to ask for a medical license?
We have not developed a map to show us, but we believe that there will be some issues.
So you think there's going to be a problem?
I do.
And we haven't developed the map because of why?
Because we're following the direction of the council.
So if we asked you to develop that map, you could get that done?
We could talk about the mechanics of what that would take. I believe there's some technical issues with it as well. But that's something we could definitely look at.
I'm just concerned, fellow council members, it's a constitutional amendment that was passed by the citizens in the state. And I believe our ordinance has prevented anyone from opening shop within the city of Independence. And you could say, well, they have to wait for the license, but as I understand it, they have points. And there's only 8 licenses for this entire district, which is much larger than Independence. So by delaying their ability to apply, we may be effectively denying all licenses in this city, because they may all be gone. That's why I am very much opposed to sending it back. I don't know why we can't just follow the Constitution and be done with it.
What I might suggest, just because it seems like there might be a range of opinions here. Next Monday night, we can, we could stake out 2 different paths. Staff can place on the agenda the amended UDO language, but we can also put a resolution that would direct us to send it back to the Planning Commission. And that way, because it's difficult in a study session environment for the council to provide formal, action, so that we can stake that out so that the council can have an opportunity to take legislative action at our meeting next Tuesday evening.
Mr. City.
Mayor Pro Tem.
If I may. Go ahead.
Oh,
Okay.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor Pro Tem. Mr. City Manager, is there not more than 9 licenses possible for this district?
Pardon, go ahead.
There's,
Tom, you're standing there.
there's 24 per congressional district.
Right.
That is what the state has said that they would allow.
Okay. Thank you.
Councilman?
What I would suggest the council consider is that if you are going to send it back to the Planning Commission, which I think is pointless, but if you decide you're going to do that, I would suggest we go ahead and rescind Ordinance 19023. So there's not an ordinance on the books at this time, and we're not in violation at least. And then we come up with a new ordinance.
And Madam City Lawyer, if there's nothing on the books that would prevent someone from applying, they're just neutral and anybody can apply at that point, right?
It would be the state regulations that, and the DHS rules that would apply.
Okay.
So I would move that we rescind this motion if we're going to send it back to the Planning Commission. Is that what everyone would like to do, is send it back to the Planning Commission?
You
For
can't
the-
make a motion in a study.
We can't.
Sorry.
No, I didn't make a motion.
Okay.
I just threw out my thoughts.
Okay.
They're out there.
Yeah, you can't.
So can that be considered at the next Tuesday meeting?
Yes.
Okay.
Anything else, Tom?
Nothing else?
All right. Our first staff report is the year-end performance measure update. Mr. City Manager.
Yes, Mr. Mayor Pro Tem and members of the council, as we have done since the adoption of our 5-year strategic plan, we provide quarterly updates on our performance measures related to that plan. So tonight, Kristen Ayers will be giving what will constitute the report for the fourth quarter of fiscal year 2018-19, which will really capture the activity for the last fiscal year.
Are you gonna be here? You gotta get a hot spot. You have to get a hot spot.
Good evening, Kristen Ayers, Resource Performance and Strategic Planning Manager. Almost there. And I'm here tonight to give the year-end summary for fiscal year 18-19, which is our second full year of measuring all our goals in the strategic plan. As a reminder, this is just a summary presentation of some highlights from our performance measures dashboard. This is not all of the things that we measure. So first I'm going to go over the yearly goals that we met. So the format of our dashboard measures items quarterly. However, some of our measures have a yearly goal. These are the measures that met their yearly goal for the fiscal year. First, we have data sets. Each quarter, we post open data sets to our website for citizens to view. This fiscal year, we added 4 data sets for public consumption. These were warrants, contractor licenses, special event permits, and upcoming court dockets. We now have 16 data sets that are open to the public, which include rental unit inspections, crime stats, and restaurant inspection violations. This information can be found in our open government section on the main page of the city's website. Next, we have median household income. The city, along with the Chamber of Commerce and the Economic Development Council, set an aggressive goal to reach a median household income of $50,000 by the year 2020. While that goal was already met last July, this measure has continued to surpass that original goal by reaching $51,689 this July, which is a 3.1% increase over last year. Lastly, we have dangerous building demolitions. The city's goal is to demolish 20 dangerous buildings each year. In last fiscal year, we demolished 34 buildings, which was $225,000 that we spent. Next, we have the yearly goals that were not met during the fiscal year. First, we have single-family building permits. This year, we issued 91 of these permits, which just missed the goal of 100. The first and fourth quarters, there were many permits issued, but the winter months saw very slow permit growth. This is also less permits than were issued in the previous year. There was also a decrease in the number of visitors to historic sites over the last fiscal year. While the yearly goal of increasing by 3% was not met, tourism has seen an increase in the number of visitors since adding the Welcome Center at the Chamber of Commerce. Lastly, we have rental-ready inspections. The goal is to complete 2,400 rental-ready inspections, but this was barely missed by 2,362 inspections being completed this fiscal year. Next, we have goals that were met every quarter. Met or surpassed every quarter. Records request response time. The city clerk's office must respond to records requests within 5 days. The average response time for this fiscal year was 2.5 days, which is a pretty amazing feat, seeing as during this year, the clerk's office fulfilled 449 records requests, which is 184 more than the previous 5-year average. Pothole service requests. The city set a goal to complete 75% of pothole service requests within 3 days. This year, the average was 98.5% of potholes being completed within that time frame, which is much higher than last year's average of 86%. In the fourth quarter alone, 508 potholes were repaired with an average repair time of 1 day. Lastly, we have code enforcement inspections, and the goal is to inspect 75% of codes cases within 5 days. The average for the year was 86.25% of these cases being inspected, with that percentage having increased every quarter over the year. While these measures did not meet their goals throughout the year, they did show improvement from quarter 1 to quarter 4. First, we have fire department response time. The fire department's response time goal is 6 minutes and 20 seconds. While they did not reach that goal this fiscal year, their response time did drop from 8 minutes and 40 seconds to 8 minutes and 30 seconds in quarter 4. Police department's response time goal is 5 minutes. While they also did not reach that goal this year, they did get close and showed a lot of improvement over the prior year. Their time dropped from 5 minutes and 57 seconds to 5 minutes and 30 seconds. This drop may be attributed to proximity dispatching, which shortens the time from dispatch to process and dispatch an officer. Lastly, the answer time to the Utility Customer Service Center saw the biggest improvement from quarter 1 to quarter 4, going from 18 minutes and 43 seconds to 8 minutes and 48 seconds. This measure has continuously struggled to get to the goal of 5 minutes with the new billing system and credit card processing fees that have lengthened conversations with customers on the phone. However, it has seen great improvement. So that concludes the overview of our performance measures dashboard for the city, but I'd like to quickly introduce you all to another piece of our performance management system. We belong to a group of local governments called the Regional Benchmarking Initiative, which meets quarterly to benchmark on many different aspects of city governments. We collect data and benchmark with 21 different cities and counties, including Kansas City, Olathe, Overland Park, and Lee Summit. While this group is a work in progress and we are still defining and perfecting the data we collect, we have published a report for 2017, which includes measures for 3 different service areas: communications, public works, and workforce. So sorry, these are kind of small, but I wanted to just give you a couple of samples from the data in our 2017 report. So I pulled one measure from each of the 3 service areas. On the screen, you will see a chart that benchmarks a communication measure: how many likes each jurisdiction's Facebook page has per 1,000 population. And in this report, we measure most of these things by per capita or per 1,000 to be able to compare with cities that are much larger or much smaller than us in the region. In 2017, we had 55 likes per 1,000 population. Since that time, though, communication with the public has become one of our strategic plan goals, and we have worked hard to engage our citizens on online platforms. We have added 5,000 followers on Facebook since this stat was taken in 2017. The next measure comes from the Public Works Service area. Yes? Yeah.
Wasn't on. Mr. Mayor Pro Tem, since we're
Council.
using the snow plowing for major cities,
Yes.
as this one here, out of curiosity and funness, Mr. City Manager, did we not implement the new tracking system for our snow trucks for this coming year?
That is included in the budget and will
Right.
be live with our snowplows this season.
So hopefully this should go up higher next year.
Hopefully.
Okay, thank you.
Yes. So this measure comes from the Public Works Service area. And this chart shows a benchmark of the percentage of citizens satisfied with snow plowing on major city streets from each city's citizen satisfaction survey. And another point to make here is that we do our citizen satisfaction surveys every 2 years. So this is actually our 2016 data. So hopefully when we do our 2020 survey, it will have improved. The last service area was workforce. This measure shows the retention rate for each city, which is the percentage of employees who maintained their employment with the city during 2017. And you can see our retention rate is pretty high in comparison to other cities. Again, that was just a sampling of the 112 measures that we have collected so far with the Regional Benchmarking Initiative. We're also collecting data for service areas such as recreation, code enforcement, and economic development. So it's a pretty exciting group. And benchmarking with our peers, if we see that we're low in an area, it's a great way to ask our peers what they're doing differently and to share, best practices with each other. So with that, I will take any questions.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Our final staff report is for boards and commissions. Madam City Clerk.
So we have 2 boards that we're trying to fill vacancies on. The first is the Board of Ethics. We have received a recommendation by Mayor Ware to reappoint Robert Murphy to the Board of Ethics. So if there's no objection from the council, we'll add a resolution to the next regular meeting.
Hearing none.
All right. And then we have Truman Memorial Scholarship Fund Candidate Selection Committee. We're looking for direction to add a resolution to reappoint Roby Matthews and Jim Blau. They're both the incumbents for this board, and we've received recommendation to reappoint them.
Hearing no objection.
All right, that is all.
Anything else the council would like to discuss? We are adjourned.